Okay, today's warm-up is what we learned yesterday. We learned about vertical asymptotes yesterday. Please look back at your notes. What is step 1 to finding the vertical asymptote? Factor. Is it already factored for you? Yep, that was the hard part. What's step number 2? Cancel. Yep, is there anything to cancel out? No, okay, so that's done. What is step 3? Set denominator to 0. And what? Exactly, 0 and solve. So guys, there are 2 items in the denominator. We have x plus 2 in the denominator, set it equal to 0, solve it. And we have x minus 3, set it equal to 0 and solve. So what are my answers? Perfect. X equals -2 and x is 3. So this is what we learned yesterday. This is how you find the vertical asymptote. Today, we are going to learn how to find horizontal asymptotes. So to find the horizontal asymptote, we are going to compare the exponent of the numerator to the exponent of the denominator. There's going to be 3 types of horizontal asymptotes. The first one, if the degree is bigger on the bottom. So look at this example. You see how there's an x here, there's nothing up here, there's just a 1. Here there's an x squared compared to an x. Another example, let's say I have x to the 6th. Something like this. And then I have x cubed. Do you guys see how all of these examples, the exponent in the denominator is bigger? Okay, so if it's bigger on the bottom, on your paper, it says bigger on bottom. Your answer is 0. Okay, so if it's bigger on bottom, your answer is 0. It'll be y equals 0. That's your horizontal asymptote. The next case, if the degree is bigger on the numerator. So on your paper, it says bigger on top. If it's bigger on top, your answer is none. So notice this example. Your exponent on the top is bigger than the exponent on the bottom. Can you guys make up another example? X what? Cubed? Plus 4, okay. Over what? X squared? Okay, good. Minus 4 or 3. Okay, you guys see, y'all gave me an exponent that's bigger on top. If your exponent is bigger on top, your answer is none. You have no horizontal asymptote. Okay, the last one is if you have the same degree. So here's the example here. There's an x squared and an x squared. If your exponents are the same, your answer is just the coefficients. So the answer is 3/2. So exponents are the same. You divide the coefficients. Can y'all give me another example? Can y'all make one up? X squared plus 2 over what? 3x squared minus 9. Okay, these are the same. That means your answer is the coefficient. So what's my answer going to be? Y equals what? 1/3. There's a 1 right here. Make sense? Okay, so those are the 3 different cases that you'll see. Let's look at some examples. Is this big on top, big on bottom, or the same? Big on bottom. So when it's Bob, what's the answer? 0. What this means is your asymptote is at 0. Your horizontal asymptote is right here at 0. So this is what your graph would look like. Okay. Your range will always follow this format. It will always be this. The reason why, let's start at the bottom part. You see how it's going down to negative infinity? So we have negative infinity. Follow the line, it goes up to the asymptote. The asymptote is 0. Then let's look at the next part of the graph. The bottom is at 0. That's why we have a 0. And then it goes up to infinity. So your range will always have this format. Always. Your asymptote just goes right here. Let's do example 2. Big on top, big on bottom, or the same? Same. So what's the answer? Y equals what? 5. If you put 5 over 1, you're not wrong. Okay, so what's the range, guys? Good. Union. 5 to infinity. All right, so that is your range for that one. It will always be the same format. So your y equals value will be right here. Next example. Big on top, big on bottom, or same? Same. So what is it? Y equals 1. The coefficient's here of 1. Tell me the range. Good. 1 to infinity. Okay, next. Big on bottom. So big on bottom, answer 0. Y equals 0. Same format. 0, 0. That's your range. All right, next example. We're going to do a lot more in this example. I'm going to ask you guys to incorporate what we learned on Friday to find the whole, to find the vertical asymptote, and to find the domain. So first, let's do what we just learned. Is it big on top or bottom? Top. Oh, it's big on top. So your answer here is none. There is no horizontal asymptote. Since there's no asymptote, we don't have to do this thing. Don't copy this down, just look. Normally your asymptote goes here and here, right? But there is none, okay? So it's just all real numbers. You go from negative infinity to infinity. So whenever you do not have a horizontal asymptote, it's just all real numbers. Okay, that's what we learned today. Let's recap what we've been learning. So we're going to find all of these now. Let's find the whole. How do I find the whole? What is always step number 1? Factor. Guys, this is why you need to learn how to factor if you are struggling. Please, in your own time, look at videos, just type in factoring. Lots of stuff will come up. So first we have to factor. So I'm going to do the numerator first. I have x cubed minus x squared minus 6x. What can all these be divided by? X. Good. Everyone write that down. That means x is on the outside. What is left over?
X squared minus x minus 6.
Perfect. Now I can do an eye chart. We couldn't jump in at the eye chart first. Now we can. So we have -6 and -1. That's 1. I need 2 numbers that multiply to -6. Good. And these also add to give me -1. Perfect. So these are your factors. X minus 3 and x plus 2. Do not forget, guys, I had because we divided by an x in the beginning, x is on the outside, okay? Do not leave out that x. Whatever you divide by goes on the outside. Keep it there. Okay, so guys, that's the top. Let's do the bottom. What can all of these be divided by? -3, good. So -3 is now on the outside. What's left? Yep, you got it. Go ahead and do an eye chart, guys. Two numbers that multiply to -8, but add to -2. What are they? -4 and 2. -4 times 2 is -8. -4 plus 2 is -2. So -3 is still on the outside, and my factors are x minus 4 and x plus 2. All right, guys, that was the denominator. So guys, all that was just factoring. So the numerator is here, x times x minus 3, x plus 2. The denominator is -3 times x minus 4, x plus 2. Okay, now we can start the process of finding the whole and the vertical asymptote. It just takes a while to factor. That's why you need to get practice at it. Okay, what cancels? What did I just find by canceling out? The whole.
X value.
Yes, the x value of the whole. Thank you, Blaine. So x plus 2, set it equal to 0. Whatever cancels out, that's how you find your x value of the whole. So x is -2. That is the x value of the whole. Yes. Thank you, Fu. So I'm going to plug it in. So, guys, I'm just going to rewrite this nice and pretty down here. X times x minus 3, -3 x minus 4. This is what's left over because we canceled those out. So I'm going to erase these x's. And what do I plug in? -2, this x value. Okay. Calculate with me. What's -2 minus 3? Good. -5. And then what's -5 times its -2 right here? Thank you, David. +10. All right, this bottom one. -2 minus 4, -6 times -3. Good, +18. Now, guys, if you go ahead and put this as your answer, you'll get points off. Why? It's not simplified. So can y'all simplify 10 over 18? What will you get? Yes. I know what you meant. It's 5/9. Oh, very good. I know what you meant. Okay, so that means your whole is 5/9. All right, that's how you find the whole. Let's find the vertical asymptote. Look back at your notes or at the warm-up. How do you find the vertical asymptote? Thank you, Jaren. You set the denominator equal to 0. Well, guys, look, let me highlight the denominator. This right here is what's left of your denominator. So we're going to set this equal to 0 and solve it. So I'm going to do that over here. -3 x minus 4, set it equal to 0. What's first? Thank you, Akiva. So I have x minus 4 equals 0. And then you just add 4 to both sides. So what's my answer? 4. So guys, that is your vertical asymptote. X equals 4. Okay, we're almost done. What's the format we always take for the domain and range? -infinity to what? 4. This is x equals 4. That goes right here. 4 goes here, and that's infinity. All right. Now, we cannot equal the whole. What is the x value of our whole? Yes, the whole is at -2 and 5/9. The x value is -2. we cannot equal -2. So please include this in your domain. This is your entire answer for the domain. X can be anything between -infinity and 4. X can be anything bigger than 4 up to infinity, but it cannot equal -2. Okay, what can Y not be equal to? Yep, because that's a whole. That's the Y value of the whole. So that is the end of this problem. I'm going to have you guys do example 6. Okay, so you should have factored this part. These both can be divided by X. So X should be on the outside. And then you do an eye chart. -9's on top. We don't have a middle term. Oh, I forgot a squared. Okay. There's no middle term, so that's 0. 3 times -3 is -9. 3 minus 3 is 0. So my factors are X on the outside, and then I have X plus 3 and X minus 3. So this is the numerator. Then you should have factored the denominator. So you would divide this by 3, by 3, by 3. So 3 is on the outside. We're left with x squared minus 3x minus 3. Then you were supposed to do an eye chart. Two numbers that multiply to -3. Sorry, I went too fast. This should be a 2, -2. The reason why, 6 divided by 3 is 2. So I need two numbers that multiply to -3 and add to -2, which I'll get. Good, -3 and 1. So y'all have this. Okay, so I'll set it up. In the numerator, we have x times x minus 3, x plus 3. And in the denominator, I have 3 times x minus 3 and x plus 1. All right. What cancels? The minus 3's. So guys, that's your whole. So the question that asks for the whole, set what we crossed out equal to 0. What's the whole? 3. That's the x value of the whole. Now let's plug it in to see what the y value is. I'm just going to write what's left over. So I have on the top this, and in the denominator, I have this. So we're going to plug in a 3. Erase these x's. We'll put a 3 in there. Okay, what's 3 plus 3? Times 3? 18. Thank you, David. 3 plus 1? 4 times 3? 12. Divide top and bottom by 6. We need to simplify. You'll get 3 halves. So that is your y value of the whole. Vertical asymptote. How do you find it? Set the denominator equal to 0. So this was an x at first. We're going to set the denominator equal to 0. So we're going to divide by 3. And we get x plus 1 equals 0. So x is -1. That is your vertical asymptote. X equals -1. Okay, for horizontal asymptote, guys, is it big on top or bottom? Big on top. So if it's big on top, what's the answer? Good. If you get a bot, it's none. Okay, so what's your range if it's none? All real numbers. Okay, now guys, remember, we can't equal the whole, so it's y cannot be what? 3 halves, because that's the y value of the whole. Now let's do the domain. Your domain is always the same format, -infinity to -1, -1 to infinity, and what can x not be? 3, because that's the value of the whole. This is the whole. This is the whole. You cannot equal the whole. Okay,